Joining me now is Jason Waller. Jason is a veteran prosecutor who handled this case as an assistant district attorney in Wake County. He's now the DA of Johnston County. And Jason, I feel like you have been involved in 50% easily of the high profile cases I've covered over the years. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you became a prosecutor.
Sure. Yeah, we spent a lot of time together in the courthouse with cases over the years. I'm originally from a little town called Beulahville, North Carolina. Went to law school at and undergrad in law school at UNC. And after my second year in law school, I did an internship with the Wake County District Attorney's Office. Fell in love with the job, fell in love with the system, the people, law enforcement, working with victims as an intern. Just thought it was a great fit for me. After I graduated from law school, Colin Willoughby offered me a job in the Wake County DA's office. I accepted right away and spent from 2006 to 2018. I was there in Wake County and handled a lot of driving while impaired cases to start with, but then moved up to Superior Court and handled homicides and robberies. Tried the Apex teen murder case and two capital cases, and also the robbery of Walnut Creek. Then in 2018, came over to Johnston County and was appointed as the DA in July of 2025.
So this was your first big case, and I know from your background that you've been doing prosecuting for 20 years.
Right.
Would you say this is a calling? I mean, a lot of people use it as a stepping stone, working in a DA's office, and then they move on to private practice.
No, I think calling's a good way to describe it. I'm definitely a career prosecutor. I've been doing it for 20 years. And you just, the relationships I formed within, both the Wake County DA's office, Johnston County DA's office, relationships with law enforcement. It's just been a really good experience for me. I love helping victims. I think it's a tough job when it comes to helping victims because they're going through the worst thing imaginable in their lives, and you're never going to be able to make them happy or even satisfy them. But as long as you can keep them informed and at least give them some idea of where a case is going, I always kind of look at it as like trying to help them get through a chapter of their lives and deal with a terrible situation. And certainly we're not closing the book on their loved one and those memories, but we try to help them get through a terrible chapter of their lives so that they can start to move forward and um, in a case like this, in a homicide, start celebrating their loved one's memory and not be, tied up in the court system for years.
And I know this was your first big murder case
Hmm.
assigned to
It
you
was.
by then District Attorney Colin Willoughby, who laid it out, was really clear that this is going to take a long time. This is complex. This is high profile. It's going to have a lot of media attention. Right away, you're interacting, like you said, with the victim's family. What did you learn from them about the victim, Matt Silliman?
Yeah, sure. After Colin assigned me the case, like I said, it was my first big case, and I was all in it right to start with. But we wanted to give the family time to grieve. I always find that's important to give people space and tell them, hey, this is going to be a long process. We'll be here for you when you need us or when things start happening in the case. And we met with the Sillimans, Ben and Betty, and right away it was obvious how much they loved their son, how proud of their son they were. Matt was an Eagle Scout, and that was something that certainly Ben Silliman, I believe it was Dr. Silliman, was very proud of that. But you could also tell that they were going through what a lot of parents deal with when kids grow up and going through those teenage years. Matt was trying to find his own identity and trying to, find out what friend group he fit into and manages high school studies and whatnot. So they were going through, a tough process like a lot of families go through in that age where, teenagers are trying to find their own identity. But it was clear from the start just how much they loved their son and how much They wanted him to be on the right path, and how they were concerned about some of the people he was starting to hang out with, including Ryan Hare and Allegra Dahlquist and Adil Khan.
Yeah, and he, I know, had some mental health struggles, and his parents, I had spoken to his parents as well, had
Yeah,
felt like he fell in with the wrong crowd.
right.
And this is so hard to understand because it happened in this really quaint, beautiful suburb of Raleigh called Apex, a bedroom community to Raleigh, not a place where things like this happen. And then on top of it, to have teenagers involved. I mean, how unusual was all of this?
Yeah, I mean the first part of that, the Apex is a great community, small, it's growing now, but 12 years ago or more, whatever it is now, it was a lot smaller then. Everybody knew each other. Yeah, very quiet community. That's not where we had a lot of our violent crimes coming out of at that time. Apex was more of your, property crimes, traffic crimes, that kind of thing. And so there was that aspect of it. And then, yes, the unusual nature of the age of the kids involved, all being high school students, going to the local high schools. That was, certainly an unusual aspect of the case right to start with. I mean, nobody wants to hear about, teenagers killing each other in this manner. So that got a lot of attention right to start with. It certainly struck me right to start with about how unique this case was.
And you had several defendants in this case, which makes it complex because everybody's telling different stories. And so you were able to get two of the defendants to testify against Ryan Hare, and a third person didn't testify, Adil Khan, but you were able to get some information from him that you were able to use. How did you put all this together and figure out, okay, who's got what information, and then take that narrative to court in front of a jury?
Yeah, I mean, in any case where you have multiple defendants, co-defendants, whether it be the Walnut Creek robbery, this case, or any other, violent crime or homicide, you have to start looking at the total case, and kind of look to see who you think the most culpable person is. And that may be the person that actually puts hands on somebody, or it may be the person that it was their idea to do it in the first place. And then you start looking at what evidence you have, and then also you kind of need to talk with your victims about, if you got four co-defendants, are we going to have four trials, or are we going to have to utilize some plea deals or whatnot? And it's just a process, and it's a case by case basis. But in this case, uh, Allegra Dahlquist came in and she gave a statement outlining what happened. Drew Shaw was the first person that came in and gave a statement. His grandmother had noticed something was going on with him the night of the murder, and got him to go to the Apex Police Department, where he ended up giving a statement as to how Matt had been killed. And then after charges were brought, Allegra Dahlquist gave a statement outlining everything that had happened. And Adil Khan also gave a statement about all the events, the attempted murder that had happened a few days prior, and then the murder itself. All of them gave consistent statements, and consistently they all said it was Ryan's idea, that it was him that was kind of um,
The
laying out
ringleader.
laying out the plan, that it was the one that he was the one that had the issue with Matt. And Ryan never gave a full confession in the case, but it wasn't just that. It was that it appeared to be that he was the mastermind, and he was the one that was set out to get Matt Silliman based on some wrongs that he thought Matt had done to him.
What was the narrative, the story that you were able to put together to take to court? Because it was very complex. I mean, obviously, you don't have to tell us every detail, but
Yeah,
what was the basic version of what happened that night?
it's really sad that it appears that it all originated based on what a lot of us deal with, or dealt with in high school, and people are dealing with today, about people interested in the same girl or guy, and jealousy and things that you hear about in high schools a lot, where I think Matt was interested in Allegra. There was another girl, Vicky, I believe her name was, that Matt was interested in as well. And Ryan was interested in Allegra and Vicky. And they all just kind of came together in terms of, who was attracted to who. And Ryan took offense to it. And he had this make believe character, Roger, that he wanted to blame all bad things on. And through the course of events, they, Ryan devised a plan where they would drug Matt out in this house in New Hill and leave him there, and then they would go bury him in this grave they dug in the woods in that area. And so Ryan was able to get a deal on board and Allegra on board, and they used Drew Shaw as a lookout outside the house. And it just really all seemed to come from, Ryan didn't like Matt and felt that he had wronged him in some way that most teenagers, like, does it hurt your feelings and all that kind of stuff, but you deal with it. But instead, he plotted to kill Matt based on kind of I don't know if a love triangle or a love situation.
I mean, I remember too, the details were pretty horrific. They drugged him with, I believe, horse tranquilizers. There was also alcohol.
Yeah.
And then they covered his head with a bag and taped it and put him, I think, zipped him up in a sleeping bag. And then I think at one point too, someone hit him in the head
Yeah.
um, with a hammer. And I know there was a lot of online chatter surrounding this, talking about it, maybe being a satanic ritual, a cult killing. Did that make it more complicated for you, or did you guys just ignore that chatter?
There was some talk that it was all based on a book called Killing Mr. Griffin, I believe, a book that was out there. And then there was all this talk about whether or not they were members of the Insane Clown Posse group or something like that. We looked into all that, but as prosecutors, you got to deal with the facts that you have and the evidence that you have. And that really, those kind of lines of thought really never went anywhere. It was all about, again, about, high school drama that really took a sinister turn and ended up in this situation. But yeah, the plot was to get him in that house, and Ryan kept letting Matt know, or making Matt think, that this make believe character, Roger, was after him. And that's why Matt stayed out in the house, because he thought Roger was going to get him. And then, like you said, they ended up giving some wine mixed with horse tranquilizers, and that kind of made him groggy. And then they put the bag over his head and zip tied it. And by all accounts, probably Allegra was the last person to put zip ties around his neck, and he asphyxiated in the bag.
And they never buried him. I mean, you guys were
No,
able to find the body because I guess Drew Shaw led
correct.
you to that location.
Right.
So Ryan was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. The others ended up getting lesser sentences. In fact, I think Drew is out of prison. He
Hmm.
was the least culpable. Did you feel like justice was served in this case?
I did. I thought, again, I thought Ryan was the mastermind behind it. I thought that the others, kind of played horrific roles in the case. As I said, Allegra was probably the last person to put the zip tie around Matt's neck, and but we didn't think that any of it would have happened but for Ryan and Ryan's plot, Ryan's use of Roger. Really felt like he was the one that, if it hadn't been for him, that Matt would still be alive.
And I know you don't get involved in the cases, once they're appealed, but apparently because he was 18 at the time, he can be resentenced due to a 2016 US Supreme Court ruling that banned mandatory life without parole sentences for juvenile killers. He's appealing it. He's appealed, I think, in December of 2025. I mean, is there a concern when you have spent so much time on a case like that to think that this person could eventually get out of prison, could eventually be paroled?
I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, I think our whole theory of the case was that Ryan was evil, that he planned all this to kill somebody that was supposed to be his friend. That being said, you know, I respect the law. You know, I'm a rule of law prosecutor, and if the Supreme Court and a judge says that, you know, he can be released after 40 years or whatever the term ends up being, then I respect the law. I respect the law. That's part of the process, and you know, it's my job as a DA to apply the law and apply the law to the facts as they are, and then kind of let other courts deal with what happens afterwards. And you know, I respect, as I said, I respect the rule of law, and if that's the rule, then sometimes you have to follow the law, even if that's not what you want to maybe would want to see happen. But if that's the law, then you have to follow it.
You know, you've handled so many cases over the years. You mentioned a few of them. Does this leave an impression on you because of the ages of the people that were involved? And all murders obviously are senseless, but this one maybe more so?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from day one, I mean, that was you have that question, why are we here? Like, how did this teenage drama lead to a kid getting a bag put over his head and other kids digging a grave for him? I mean, that was really the question that I kept asking myself to start with is, you know, how did we get here? There's no robbery. There's no, you know, drug deal gone bad. These are just, you know, somebody stole somebody's girlfriend. And instead of, you know, talking it out or, you know, even going about it different ways, we come to this. And that was just really the sad part about it. And then, you know, this was the first time dealing with a family in this situation for me. That really struck me, just seeing the emotions that they had to go through after the trial. You know, we had made the decision that we were going to do the plea deals beforehand, but I just remember after the trial, the Sillimans just being exhausted and saying there's no way they could go through three more trials like that. So seeing the range of emotions, and I can't imagine, you know, what they went through as a father and mother, and as Matt's sister was heavily involved, and just seeing what they went through was just a eye-opening experience for me, and something I've taken. I did this case early in my career, and I've just taken that experience with me throughout my career to, you know, do what I can to support families, and make sure that they understand the process and that we're there for them.
But
And
yeah, so you know, we learn things in our careers, but I think we also learn things as human beings. And as the father of three young children, I mean, this is a cautionary tale, right? To keep your children close, to know everything they're involved in.
absolutely, anytime, you know, first and foremost, when I talk to my kids, I'm like you're good kids. Um, you may make mistakes. You know, a lot of times the cover up is worse than the crime itself. Be honest if you get caught or if you do something wrong. Own up to your mistakes and take responsibility and don't try to cover it up. But the big thing that I try to tell them is you got to be careful who you hang out with. You got to be careful who you associate with. That, you know, you'll go, you know, just on a car ride with somebody, and next thing you know, they're doing something wrong, and you're with them and can get into that trouble with them. So whether it's my kids or if I'm speaking at a school or a classroom full of kids coming by the courthouse, I always tell them be careful who you associate with, because you can get in trouble by somebody else's wrongdoings that you're um, brought into.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, I have something in common with your kids. My dad was the DA of the county I grew up in,
Right.
and there was nothing that I could
Right.
slide past him. Believe me,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
he he had all the means to check out everybody and anybody. So it's important that, you know, you've got somebody looking over your shoulder when you're young, when you don't
That's
always
correct.
make the best decisions. Thank you, Jason, so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Thank you, Amanda. Good to see you again. And we spent a lot of time together.